I'm Rita Van Zandt. I'm here at the Blue Ridge Bookfest, and I'm talking today with Dr. Walt Larimore. Dr. Larimore has lived in Western North Carolina, although he doesn't live here now, and he has blessed us with several wonderful books that he's written about Western North Carolina, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Dr. Larimore, you're a family doctor. You graduated from Duke Medical School, and then, interestingly to me, you moved to Bryson City, North Carolina. That had to be quite a shift.
Well, it was. Well, actually, I went to Harvard Medical School.
Ah.
Well, we call it Harvard on the Bayou.
Oh, okay.
That's LSU. And then Duke was residency.
I see.
Family medicine, sports medicine. And Barb and I fell in love with North Carolina. And so the mountains were drawing us, and we interviewed literally from Murphy all the way up the mountains, up to Blowing Rock and Boone, and felt called to Bryson City, and that was back in 1980.
Well, I think a lot of people in this area can identify. Once you come into this area, you really feel like the mountains kind of call you. There's a real specialness here.
They do, although in the smaller communities, of course, you're local. I mean, you're not local. And
right.
I remember after practicing there a few years, I asked one of the senior physicians, I said, his name was Bill Mitchell, I said, Mitch, when are you local? And he said, when I know your grandpapa really well. And I think there's some truth. I think it may take a couple, 3 generations.
I think you're absolutely right. You mentioned Barb. She's your wife, and then you have 2 children.
We do. Barb and I met when we were 5, and so we've known each other our whole life. No memory of life without Barb. We've been married 40 years, and then 2 adult children and 2 grandchildren.
Ah, blessing.
Yeah.
Now, you were a doctor, and then you became a writer. I know William Carlos Williams, who's a poet, was a doctor, and he would come home at night and write just to kind of unwind. But you wrote the Bryson City series after you left Bryson City. So did you write while you were there? Some ideas about writing a book then?
Yeah, no, I didn't. I journaled a lot. Admired writing of other physicians from previous eras, but actually most of my early writing was technical. I published studies, and then in 1990 started writing a diary of a practice from where I was practicing that ran for about 10 years in a professional journal called American Family Physician, and then started working with Fox News as a medical consultant with them, and then they developed a health channel, so I started doing Fox Health. And so that gave me an opportunity to travel around the country and speak, and I always told stories of those Bryson City days and those wonderful people of Western North Carolina. And so an editor from a publishing company heard me telling those stories and said, have you ever thought of writing them down? I said, no, and she said, well, would you? And that began what ended up being a 3-part series of Bryson City books.
There's a lot of people out listening now that say, I have a book inside me. Did you know that you wanted to do a nonfiction, or even early on in thinking about Bryson City, did you first think about maybe doing a fictional book?
Well, the debate at the publishing company was, do we make this autobiographical? Well, no one knows you from Adam. So,
right.
Or do we make it fictional? But these are true stories about real people. Names changed to protect the guilty, I say, you know. So they decided to do it as real life books, sort of like James Herriot did in his 3 books about his veterinary practices. And so I guess it was the right decision because they've just done so well. They've been in print a long time, and they continue to sell well. And Barb and I get the most wonderful letters and notes from people who've been touched. In fact, just maybe a month ago, a commander in Afghanistan wrote me a letter, and he said, I wanted to thank you. He said, he was in an outpost, and he said, I was just praying that I might find a book that would help me on leadership, and went by the post library next time I went into the big posts, and there was your book, and I picked it up, and thank you for writing this book on leadership. And it's just stories about practicing medicine. But people will read at different levels at different times, and they'll find things that touch them. And I think it's just stories resonate with all of us at the heart level.
Well, as I read the Bryson City series, I thought this should be required reading for people graduating or interning and then graduating, to find out how you adapt into the environment you're put in, because here you have all this knowledge, this book learning, and you go out into the real world, and some people sometimes aren't very receptive to all the book learning. They may have some ideas of their own. I made a list of some of the things you had to do when you went to Bryson City. You were the county coroner. Did you know that before you got there?
No, I did not.
Which I thought was that was a really, you had
Yeah.
several stories about that. You had to do birthing, which you did know, but working with midwives, which would be completely different, or I don't know, maybe they taught that in medical school, but, and you were a veterinarian. Are any of these occupations something that you want to tell a story about?
Well, it was totally unexpected. When I found out you had to be a coroner, I had to actually go to the University of North Carolina, and county doctors at that time took a training course, not to do autopsies, but just to do how do you determine the cause of death and how do you fill out the paperwork and that sort of thing. And then, but the first night I was on call, back then Bryson City had 7 doctors and served 3 counties in a little 40-bed hospital, Swain County General Hospital. And so when you took call for the hospital and the emergency room and the sheriff's office and the county jail and the nursing home and the rest home and the National Park Service and the Nantahala Outdoor Center. You were on call for everything. So I was kind of nervous my first night on call, you know.
Yeah.
And so finished the office, made rounds at the hospital. There were no phone calls. And went home and had dinner with the family and no phone calls. And stayed up for a little bit and no phone calls. And finally went to bed a little bit nervous and no phone calls. And then in the middle of the night, the phone rang. And they had channeled a call to me. And I picked it up and a guy said, I said, "Hello, can I help you?" And he said, "Are you the new doctor?" And I said, "I am." He said, "You better get up here. She's about to deliver." And I said, "Oh, well, you don't know, but we just built a new birthing center at Swain County General Hospital. If you bring her down, you'll be the first delivery in Swain County in, I don't know, 20, 30 years. He said, "She's not coming to the hospital. You've got to come up here." And I figured, well, there were people doing home births, and so this was going to be one. So I got in the car and went down Hospital Hill and crossed the river, you know, and then went up Schoolhouse Hill. Got to the house and found this farmer. He was rocking on his porch. It was the middle of the night, but he had the front porch light on. And he met me, he came down the steps, and he said, "Follow me." And we walked back to the barn. And you know what I thought? I thought, he's got his daughter pregnant. I'm gonna have to deliver this incestuous child. It's gonna ruin my reputation. And just as we got to the door, I heard my first OB patient in the middle of a contraction, and she just screamed out, and I walked in, and there was a cow with 2 hooves sticking out her backside. And now I was a city boy, Rita, so I looked at that animal and I said, "It's a bull." And he said, "It ain't no bull, boy." I said, but I'm a doctor, I'm not a vet. And he said, "I know that." And I only learned later, there was no veterinarian at the time in Bryson City, and the doctors did the basic vet care, but nobody told me that. And I repeated to him, I said, "I'm not a vet." And Rita, he looked at me just as serious. He said, "Even you can do this." And he had taken off his shirt and washed his hand and then wrapped like a towel around that calf's hooves. He was wrapping a rope around it. And he said, "All I need you to do is pump the come-along." And there was the rope connected to a come-along connected to the side of the barn. He says, "Just pump that thing." And I started pumping it, and it tightened up. And as I pumped it, it got tighter and tighter, and he washed his hand and put it up that cow to manipulate that little calf. And as that calf started to come out, you know what I thought? It's true.
What?
I thought, we could do this in the delivery room. I mean,
Oh, dear.
all you need is a little bolt. But just then he called out, he said, let her loose," and I did. And he says, "Get over here, you can deliver this calf." And so I ran over, and I'm thinking, I don't know, 16, 17 pound big baby. I didn't know it was a 45-pound calf.
Oh, my gosh.
And that calf came out, and the calf and I went to the ground and landed in this blob of mucus. And then I got scared to death because the calf wasn't breathing. And I thought, well, how do you do calf CPR?
Right.
But he unloosened the headlock, and that mama turned around and licked that baby, and it just started breathing, and I started crying, and the farmer started crying and lifted me up. And it was my first delivery in Bryson City, North Carolina in 1980, was that little calf, and he named that calf Walter.
I would imagine that endeared yourself to a lot of people that like to tease.
Oh.
Did they tease you a lot afterward?
Oh, did they?
I bet that went through the whole town.
In fact, Gary Ayers was the radio broadcaster at the local radio station, and every morning at 6 a.m. he came on. The station opened up with the day's news, and I don't know how he found out, but at 6 a.m. the next morning when my alarm clock went off, he said, "Did y'all hear about that delivery on Schoolhouse Hill that Dr. Walt did?" And it was already on the news.
Well, so that was a good introduction, but I bet you went back and said, now what else am I going to have to learn that I didn't have any knowledge about?
We had to learn how to do ultrasounds for people, for their cats and dogs, to see how many little babies they had. In fact, my wife Barb had a kidney stone our second or third year there, and she was on the x-ray table getting a kidney x-ray. And the radiologist came in and said, "Mrs. Larimore, we're going to have to take you off the table. We've got a hunting dog that's been hurt. We need to x-ray the hunting dog."
God.
And she got off the table and they x-rayed the hunting dog. One of the first times I sutured an animal in the office was a hunting dog that had been gored by a pig. And so I numbed the dog up and sewed it up. And the next day, that fella brought the dog back. And I got chewed out by my senior physician there because I hadn't used stainless steel stitches. That dog had chewed those stitches out and opened up that wound. And he said, "Are you stupid? Don't you know how to sew a dog?" And I said,
No,
"I don't know how to sew a
really.
dog." So I was stupid, but I learned. And they, as you know, Rita, wonderful, wonderful people, wonderful Americans, and they slowly accepted Barb and I was deeply grateful for that.
And you lived right across the street from the hospital.
Mm-hmm. In fact, most of the doctors, not all, but most of the doctors lived right across the street from the hospital.
So all these stories, there's a lot of humor in these books, but there's also some real poignancy. And I don't know whether we want to go into a lot of detail, but I was thinking about you became the volunteer football doctor, and you had to make some decisions about, well, Hendersonville plays Swain County.
Yeah.
So, and Heath Schuler, I think you knew Heath.
Took care of Heath and his brother Benji.
Right.
And their daddy, Joe Benny, was our postman, actually.
And so you had to make decisions in front of all the people of Bryson City, Swain County, on football fields sometime too, didn't you? There had to be a lot of pressure with that because the local people want those kids to play, and the doctor has to make a decision.
Yeah, there are many stories in the books. I mean, Swain County football isn't a sport. It's a religion,
It
as
really
football
is,
is out here. Here's a town of 900 people that could have 3,000, 4,000 people in the stands on Friday night. But I was fortunate to have been trained at Duke in sports medicine under Coach K. In fact, Coach K and I both came to Duke at the same time. At the time I was doing my football training at Duke, Steve Spurrier, later the national championship winning coach at University of Florida, now the coach at University of South Carolina, was the offensive coordinator at Duke back in the late 70s. And so the training was superb, and it was always what is best for the kids. But perhaps the most difficult moment was at Swain County Hospital, we had great surgeons. Bill Mitchell and Ray Cunningham were fabulous, fabulous surgeons. But Mitch had been around a long time. He had done MASH training as an Army surgeon, and his way of doing things, as most of us do as we get a little bit older. But when it came to a particular knee injury, he really liked to operate on that type of knee injury. And in those days, arthroscopy, which was the minor surgery of looking into a knee with a scope, had just been developed. And we could take kids and do cartilage operations with the arthroscope and have them back on the field in really sometimes a week or two.
Right.
Whereas if you did an open operation, it could be, they could lose the whole season. And we had a starting quarterback who went down with a cartilage injury, and I had to make the decision to send him from Bryson City over to Western Carolina, there was 2 new orthopedic doctors there. They're still there, wonderful sports medicine doctors, to get the arthroscopic surgery, which got him back on the playing field, but I got a lot of grief for sending him away.
So did there come a time when you really felt like, because I think even in this area in Hendersonville, there are people that won't go to the doctor until it's so bad, or they think they're going to die or whatever, and they come in a lot later than what they should. Did you notice over the time you were there that they maybe started coming a little bit earlier than that, or did they always kind of postpone till the last?
Well, when I arrived there, that had been the tradition for decades. Part of it was that the doctors, especially like Harold Bacon, who had practiced there for almost 50 years, and in the pre-hospital days, everything was done at home. The deliveries were done at home. The surgery was done at home. He did kitchen table appendectomies, kitchen table C-sections. I mean, Rita, he would pull his car up to the front door and use the kitchen table as the operating table, using newspaper as sterile sheets, because newspaper is sterile.
Right.
And he would shine the headlights through the door, so they would, a relative would hold a mirror, and that would be the light for the surgery. So when the hospital came, there was still so much done at home that the hospital is a place you went to die, and that reputation stayed around. But it had begun to change when I arrived there in 1980, and changed dramatically as younger people moved in the area, and as younger physicians came, and that was really gratifying to see.
Well, after I finished with the Bryson City series, I realized that you had just ventured out into novel writing in the same area, but a long time ago, not as modern as the Bryson City series. This is back in the 1920s, right? And the first one is Hazel Creek. And this is about a family that lives over there, and there really is a Hazel Creek, is that right?
Yeah, local listeners will know that Hazel Creek is one of the largest creeks in what is now the Smoky Mountain National Park. But before Fontana Dam and before Lake Fontana, the little mountain communities existed all across the Smoky Mountain National Park. And the town of Proctor, which was on Hazel Creek, was a happening place. I mean, in the 1920s, it was true 1920s, it was one of the first towns in western North Carolina that had electricity, it had a phone system, it had a sewer system. And it was because of the lumber company that had moved in there. So there were desperados and there were cowboys. In fact, it was called the Wild East as opposed to the Wild West.
Wow.
World famous authors and educators lived there. One of the best guest houses in the East was located in Proctor. And all of this was taking place in the 20s. When the Calhoun Lumber Company was literally clear-cutting millions and millions of board feet of these massive trees that we can't even imagine. Cherry and walnut trees that had trunks that were 16 and 18 feet across. Trees that took 10 to 12 men arm to arm to circle the trunks. Poplar trees whose first branches were 70 to 80 feet off the ground. The bottom branches.
Right.
Massive timber. And so I had heard stories about a family of 5 little girls, 4 of whom became world famous in different professions, who grew up in that valley, and their story had never been told. And so I thought, what a wonderful story to expose the authors and educators that lived there, this wonderful town that is gone. It was completely wiped out.
Because of?
Fontana Dam during the war.
Right.
Fontana Dam was built to produce electricity for the war effort, to create the aluminum at Alcoa that was used to build the planes that were so critical in the war effort. And so the people who gave up their homes and they gave up the town of Proctor were patriots whose story has never been told, who gave up their home, a way of life for their country, to help prevail in World War II. And I love telling the story, and I look forward actually to writing more books about Hazel Creek and Sugar Fork.
I notice in the reviews, the different people that write reviews for Amazon or whatever, they all say this better be a series. And then you came out with the second book, Sugar Fork, and I assume there are other books in your head. I don't know. Will this be a series?
Well, I hope so. What happens, as you know, is that the parents are lost, and actually, in one case, the father was murdered by the lumber company to try to obtain their property. They had 600 acres of beautiful virgin property. And so there are 5 little girls, and the oldest girl, Abby, has to raise her sisters. The 4 sisters are who become world famous in different professions. But Abby ended up marrying a young doctor that came there, and I felt so attracted to his story because I remember coming to the mountains as an outsider.
Right.
And he comes to the mountains as an outsider. And so his story of falling in love with Abby, and that it kind of ends at the end of the second book. But then there's wonderful stories yet to be told of how they changed medicine and caring in that area, and then how the sisters went on to become world famous.
Now, did you find their diaries, or did you just do research to find out about this family?
Well, it's a lot of oral history, and that's your area of expertise. But the oral stories I found have been remarkably accurate as I have found research to go along with them. The writings of Horace Kephart, who lived just above the Sugar Fork on Hazel Creek, were wonderfully instructive, and his journals, which are at Western Carolina University in Coloway, are chock full of pictures and stories. Of course, our Southern Highlanders that he wrote, Camping and Woodcraft, the books that he wrote when he lived in Bryson City and then lived on Hazel Creek were wonderfully instructive. There was a teacher on Hazel Creek by the name of Grace Lumpkin. And when she left that area in the late 20s, she went to New York City and became a world-famous writer. She wrote about the cotton mill strike in Gastonia in what became a world-famous book called Make My Bread. And she wrote a novel that was centered on Hazel Creek. You can see the area. And so it was fun to research those writers and what they had written about Hazel Creek, Eagle Creek, and Sugar Fork.
So what's a haint?
Well, Haint's one of the major characters. And so Haints in that area, also called sin eaters, tended to be loners who had sort of been rejected by society. But one of the ways that the sin eater or the Haint would make a living would be that they would come into the home of where someone had passed away. They had wakes where people would be set in the coffin, where people would come to the wake and mourn. But the sin eater would come, and a family member would be on one side of the body, the sin eater on the other side. They had a sacramental service where bread and wine or bread and juice would be passed across the body, and the sin eater would take the sin in an atoning sacrifice, would take the sin of that person on themselves so that that person then would have freedom to go to heaven. Now, this doesn't match any sort of Christian theology, but it was the practice. And so sin eaters tended to be, in some areas, considered despicable or dirty or decrepit because of their sin. And there was one in Hazel Creek. It just so happened that this man was a highly educated person. And it was fun to tell his story, which has only just begun in these 2 books.
Right. As you can see, when you read Dr. Larimore's books, you get a real feel for what the community is like, and he honors the community in such a way that it's really, really fun to read and instructional, and I just enjoy them so much. I wondered, are you like Thomas Wolfe, that you can't go home again after you write about all of this? Do you get people stopping you or writing you and saying, well, I remember that and that wasn't quite the way you said it or something? Or do you get people mostly writing and saying, thank you for honoring our community?
You know, it's real mixed, Rita. I've had some people that I wrote about with their permission and who've never contacted me since. I continue to write them. There's others that have been very grateful. Some have been very angry. But my intent was to honor these wonderful people and their amazing tradition, and the fact that they welcomed me and my family for the 5 years that we lived among them. I've gone back for book signings at the Hemlock Inn, at the Frymont Inn, and they've been wonderful. We've had hundreds of people come by. But there's been some noticeable absences, which has been sad for me because my intent was to honor them. And I hope that people that read it will get a sense of who these wonderful people really are.
The new novels that you've brought out was when the whole mountain range wasn't a federal park yet, right?
Correct.
So
this is
that's part of the
pre-Smoky
story in both of these series that you kind of start realizing why this is such valuable property that it needs to be protected so everybody can go in and appreciate it.
Well, of course, there were real debates about that.
Right.
Horace Kephart, who's a character in the book, was very pro the park. We have characters in the book that argue against the park for reasons that still exist
Right.
in their minds. And even when I got to Bryson City in 1980, the park had been there for 40 years. And yet there were still locals who felt, and still are, who feel that's our land, that's our property. One of the interesting things that I learned was that the National Park Rangers, who I became friends with and served as a National Park physician, they tended to treat locals a little bit different than they treated folks who came from the outside.
Right.
And I actually wrote a chapter about that called That's Just the Way It Is in one of the Bryson City books and sent it to the ranger that the story was about. And I never heard from him until I got a letter from the lawyer of the Department of Interior saying, our rangers treat everyone the same and resources are the same. And if you continue to write this, you know, you'll be in trouble, basically.
Right.
So I had to change that chapter, which I did. But later I met a man who was a former Secretary of the Interior. And we became friends, and I mentioned to him this story. And he said, oh, Walt, he said, there's official policy and there's unofficial policy. And we do treat locals differently. We have to, because this was their property or their grandparents' property. In fact, I went fishing with a local guy one day, and we separated to fish in the national park. I came back together. He was standing, I tell his story in the book. He was on a rock, and he was crying. And I said, Dave, I said, what's the matter? And he said, this land was my grandpappy's land. It's sacred land to us, and it still is to many who live there.
Well, as you can see, Dr. Larimore loves this area. It comes out in the book so well. The humor, the joy, the sorrows that people go through in the mountains are brought to life in his books. And I recommend either buying them in hardback, paperback, or on ebook, which we can now do. And I really am glad that you were able to come back and join us for this book fest.
Thanks, Rita. It's been a real treat for me.
Great.